Is the frontal bone. On the sides is the parietal bone. Right here is the nasal bone. The sphenoid is inside the eye. The temporal is on the sides right here. And the ethmoid is like right inside here. Right? The lacrimal bone is like right here basically. Zygomatic bone would be right here on the side. The maxilla is the upper part of the jaw that goes around the nasal cavity. And the mandible is the lower jaw. Right? Mental foramen is the two holes in the jaw. Right? Mandibular symphysis is right here in the middle. The vomer is this tiny little piece right here. And the inferior nasal concha is right here, and the ethmoid bone is right here, right there, which includes the middle nasal concha and superior nasal concha. Inferior orbital fissure is inside the eye. The optic canal would be to the left, which would be more medial towards the center line. Superior orbital fissure is just above that and a little bit lateral from there. Supraorbital margin is basically this right here, outlining the eyeball socket. Supraorbital foramen notch would be this tiny little hole you have on each side. Frontal nasal suture is right here in the front.
Which one?
Frontal nasal suture. It would be right directly in the center right here. Glabella is just above that. Basically your front, forehead right there, just above the nose and all that. And from the rear view, as you would see, this is their coronal suture right here. This would be the sagittal suture, which is dividing left and right. Sides, yeah. And so, yeah, the parietal left and right, that's divided by the sagittal suture. The suture bone is right here.
Wasn't that a lamp?
Sutural bone, also. Yeah, the lambdoid suture. But the sutural bone is right here. This is the lambdoid suture, dividing this part from the two parietals. Yeah, occipital from the two parietals. Then superior nuchal line would be right here. External occipital protuberance would be this right here. Occipitomastoid suture would be right here.
Guys, and they said, should we go through the activity or the list? This is what you should do.
External
the list
occipital crest.
It's a little shorter than what's in the lab manual. But read through your lab
occipital
manual
condyle.
It explains each of the structures. It gives you information about them. Yeah. So use your list as to what to pick out from the
occipital condyle.
To look at. Okay?
Which one? I didn't.
This one right here.
Was I getting a question?
This one right here.
Got it.
And then, yeah, over there. Inferior nuchal line would be right here. The mastoid process is on the sides. On the sides.
And those little things over here?
It's basically the side right here. Okay. Then, if you take from the side, as you
What
know.
about the line on the temporal and parietal? There was something dividing
The
them.
temporal would be right here. Temporal's right here, and the parietal's right here. Frontal's in the front. The sphenoid is a small piece right here on the side right here.
This over here?
Yeah. And then the zygomatic bone would be this right here.
That's the zygomatic arch, right?
Yeah, this is zygomatic bone right here. And then you know this to be the maxilla, which is the upper jaw. The mandible is the lower jaw. Mandibular angle would be right here. Right? Mandibular ramus is right here. Yeah. Mandibular notch would be right here. Right. Mandibular condyle would basically be the very top right here. Okay. And then styloid process would be, there's a little thing right here, if you can see it hanging down.
Let me put it.
Can you see it?
This?
Yeah, right there. That's called the styloid process. And then the mastoid process is right here. Right? Then the external acoustic meatus is basically your outer eardrum. Right there. Okay. Occipital mastoid suture would be, it's a dividing line that's hard to see, but it's right here dividing the occipital and the parietal and the temporal. It's like a dividing line. Okay.
You cannot really see it.
Yeah, it's hard to tell on this one, but it's there. As you know, they're divided into different sutures. But that's pretty much
we
that
have
for that part. And then, yeah, take the top off. And then, okay, so that one, the frontal is right here, basically. This is all the frontal, right? Olfactory foramina would be right here on the sides, which is basically the upper part of the nasal cavity. Optic canal would be right in here. You know, optic is having to do with the eye. Foramen rotundum is going to be this little tiny dot. I don't know if you can see in there, but what I was noticing yesterday when I was studying this stuff, a lot of the stuff with the word foramen is basically having to do with a little hole somewhere on a bone or the skull or whatever. So just remember that. Foramen ovale, see, that's the middle one. No, foramen lacerum, that's the other tiny little one right there. See, there's two of them right there. And then as you saw,
which is which?
This one right here would be the foramen lacerum, and this would be the foramen ovale.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's foramen spinosum, which would be that one right there. And then hypoglossal canal would be right here. And then this.
Sorry, they didn't record it on the video. Which one?
Hypoglossal canal would be right here. And then foramen magnum is basically this hole right here.
Okay.
And then the occipital bone is going to be right in here. The parietal bone is going to be the outer part, so it's basically the opposite of the frontal. But it's the same thing, just in a different area on the posterior side of the skull. Posterior cranial fossa would be right in here. This part right here. The jugular foramen is going to be, I don't know if you can get in there. It's going to be that hole right there.
Hold on, point it again.
The jugular foramen, which would be right here. Yeah. And then the internal acoustic meatus would be the little one, the little tiny one, right? The temporal bone is going to be this right here, which is, it's called the petrous part also. Middle cranial fossa is going to be this part right in here. And then hypophyseal fossa is going to be this part right here. It's called a hypophyseal fossa of sella turcica, which is right here. And then the sphenoid, which is two parts, is going to be, the greater wing is going to be like right in here, this area right here, and then the lesser wing is going to be like right here. Okay. And then the ethmoid is two parts also. Cribriform plate, which is going to be like right here in this area, and the crista galli is going to be the centerpiece right here. Right?
Crista galli, that's going to be probably on the test.
Yeah.
I had the feeling.
Yep. Anterior.
What's the part where the pituitary gland goes?
Pituitary gland, I think, is like somewhere right in this area right here. Anterior cranial fossa is going to be like this part right here. So, and as you know, this area from here forward is going to be the anterior cranial fossa. From here to about here is going to be the middle cranial fossa. From here back to the posterior end is the posterior cranial fossa. So, I think that is good for that part. Yeah.